Hey, thank you for tuning in. The last devotion we saw in 2 Samuel chapter 6 that David had a heart to bring the Ark of the Covenant into the city of Jerusalem, the city of David, and he did so without consulting the Lord. And then Uzzah was struck because he touched the ark with his hand. And so David had returned to Jerusalem thinking, how can I bring the ark into the city? In the meantime, the household of Obed-Edom was being blessed because of the very presence of the ark. And so in verse number 12, it was told King David, the Lord has blessed the household of Obed-Edom and all that belongs to him because of the ark of God. So David went and brought the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with rejoicing. And then when those who bore the ark of the Lord had gone 6 steps, he sacrificed an ox and a fatted animal. Now, notice that the ark is now being borne. It was meant to be carried with poles by the Levites. That was the instructions, not to be put on a cart, not to be touched but with all reverence. And every 6 steps, there's a sacrifice. I mean, David was honoring God. He learned to fear the Lord in the sense of he developed a great reverent awe of the holiness of God. And he rejoiced, and all of the people were rejoicing. And it says, and David danced before the Lord with all his might, and David was wearing a linen ephod. So David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with shouting and with the sound of the horn. So here is quite the sight of the king rejoicing as he brings the ark of the covenant into the city of David, and he's prepared a tent for it. But his wife, or one of his wives, Michal, the daughter of Saul, looked out the window and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, and she despised him in her heart. And they brought in the ark of the Lord and set it in its place inside the tent that David had pitched for it. And David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. Saul's daughter saw him in a state of euphoric worship before the Lord. And he didn't care what somebody thought of him. While Michal, the daughter of Saul, thought that it was below the king to be in such a state. Friends, there's a point where we become overwhelmed by the presence of God that our worship may look demeaning to the outsider, but our focus should never be on what people think of us or how we worship, but the glory of God that we represent, because he lives in us. David was bringing the ark into the city, but we have the very presence of God living in us. And so he's worthy of our worship, even if it brings humility upon us. He offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. The burnt offering was usually considered an offering for atonement, for sin. It means really literally to go up in smoke. But the peace offering was an offering that was given willingly or freely to give thanks to God for his provision, his blessings. And so Jesus Christ is both of those for us. And when David had finished offering the burnt offerings and the peace offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts and distributed among all of the people, the whole multitude of Israel, both men and women, a cake of bread, a portion of meat, and a cake of raisins to each one. Then all the people departed, each to his house. And David returned to bless his household, but Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, how the king of Israel honored himself today, uncovering himself today before the eyes of his servants, his female servants, as one of the vulgar fellows shamelessly uncovers himself. She was offended that he lowered himself to be one of she called the vulgar, the uneducated, the insignificant. And David simply doesn't care what people think of him. It's his worship of the Lord. You know, friends, as Christians and disciples of Jesus Christ, there's going to be times where our worship of God, our unhindered worship of God, is going to be despised by the world. Should we stop? No. We should dance before the Lord if he moves us. We should exalt him in every way. Jesus told the people in Matthew 5:11 and 12, he said, blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Our worship of the Lord, our faithfulness to God, our desire to rejoice and dance before him may look foolish to the unbeliever. But if it glorifies God, if you're stirred by him, then we should freely worship and rejoice before him. It shouldn't be about status or what people think or any of those things. In Acts chapter 5, verse 41 and 42, it says, then they left the presence of the council, rejoicing that they were counted worthy to suffer dishonor for the name. And every day in the temple and from house to house, they did not cease teaching and preaching that the Christ is Jesus. So even in the early founding of the church, Israel, the Jerusalem religious leaders were trying to crush it and humiliate the people. But it's right that we should suffer for the name of Christ, be misunderstood or humiliated. He says to us that all that desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution. It's a part of the journey, and it can be a great aspect of how we worship the Lord. He goes on after she rebukes him, and David said to Michal, it was before the Lord who chose me above your father and above all his house to appoint me as prince over Israel. The people of the Lord and I will celebrate before the Lord. I will make myself yet more contemptible than this, and I will be abased in your eyes. But by the female servants of whom you have spoken, by them I shall be held in honor. And Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no child to the day of her death. Well, excuse me. David receives the rebuke and puts it where it belongs. He says he was chosen. You and I, friends, have been chosen by God. So let's not let any opinion of the world hinder our worship before God. Let us become a people who are overwhelmed with his love, his provision, the thankfulness of what he has done for us and how he has blessed us should be a constant voice of rejoicing in our hearts and lives. And though others may not understand that devotion, that dedication, it is our blessing to be known and chosen by him. I hope that you will just let the Spirit of God stir within you to a heart that dances before him. Have a great day.